Yes,
Yes,
Shrikant.
Shrikant.
Yes, Srikant.
Okay, so today we are going to discuss about these test classes as well as deployment. So first, we'll try to cover the test classes. Then we can go for deployment. So these test classes we will implement for only Apex classes and Apex stickers. Okay, so within these Apex, we have Apex classes, okay, and Apex sticker. So then after batch Apex and then schedule Apex. Okay, so these four fall under the Apex category. So, if you created any of the Apex clauses or whatever the met data we have specified here, Apex clauses, Apex sticker, batch Apex, schedule Apex. If you create any of these four formats, or if you would like to update any of the Apex clauses, then if you are trying to deploy from sandbox to the production, you need code coverage. Okay, so generally Salesforce people they are trying to avoid implementing of these FS clauses. Why? Because the maintenance is heavy compared to other components here. So if you deploy these Apex clauses in sandbox to the production, you cannot make changes in production. So generally in our interview, they are going to ask you this question: Can we make changes in Apex clauses in production? Okay, so then blindly, what we can say, we cannot make any changes in production. Whatever the Apex clauses, Apex stickers, batch Apex, schedule Apex, anything, you cannot make any changes in production. So it is not editable, even if you are a system admin or whatever it is. Okay, so even if you are like a super admin permission, still you don't have an access to modify Apex clause in production. So that is in edit mode only. But when you are trying to save your class, it will throw an exception. So that's why if you would like to make any changes, those changes you need to make it in our sandbox, then you can deploy from sandbox to the production. So when you are like trying to deploy these changes from sandbox to the production, at the time at the time, so you need a test class, you need code coverage for your Apex classes. So if you are like trying to deploy your changes from sandbox to the production, you need to validate with the help of like change or whatever the deployment tools we are using. So based on that, we are like trying to deploy. We need to validate, and our code coverage should be 75% minimum. Okay, so 75% minimum code coverage we need to implement it. So now the thing here it is, we are having some relaxation is there. We are having some relaxation is there. So the relaxation is basically, for example, I'm having four classes. I'm having four classes. Okay, so out of these four classes, I'm in my arc. In my arc, I have only four classes. Okay, so I don't have any classes, so I'm having only four Apex classes in my arc. Okay, so now I'm like trying to deploy these four classes. I'm trying to deploy these four classes. So here, three of the classes having a 100% code coverage. So three of the classes having like a 100% code coverage. Okay, and one class having uh, one class having like a 25% code coverage. Okay, so out of these four classes, three classes having a 100% code coverage, and one class having a 25% code coverage. So when you are trying to deploy, you can deploy these changes. So generally what we are expecting, so each and every class should be 75%. Each and every class should be 75% code coverage is required if you are trying to deploy from sandbox to the production. But when you are deploying classes, so your R code coverage is more than 75%, then you can deploy your Apex classes without any code coverage also. Okay, so here what happened, I am trying to deploy these four classes. So if I'm like trying to deploy like these four classes, right? Four classes code coverage, like a 3 into 100, 300 plus 50, plus 50. Total, it will be like so even like a zero also, we are able to deploy it. So why? Because so the overall code coverage here it is 300 percentage. So 300 percentage by 75 is like a 4. You can deploy it. You can deploy it. For example, if this class code coverage is like one of the code coverage is like 90%, and you are like trying to deploy with 0%, it won't accept it. It won't accept it. So if your R code coverage is more than 75%, then even with 0 also you are able to deploy it. Even with 0 also you can deploy your Apex clauses. So the next thing here it is, in the case of like Apex trigger. In the case of Apex trigger, so these Apex trigger, you cannot deploy with 0% code coverage. You cannot deploy with 0% code coverage. So you should be at least 1 percentage of code coverage is required. 1 percentage of code coverage is required. Okay, so generally in our interview, they are going to ask you this question. So can we deploy Apex classes without any code coverage? Then what we need to say, if your R code coverage is more than 75%, even if you add our deploying class also, like with this class also, the average code coverage is more than 75%, then you can deploy with a 0% code coverage as well. But if your R code coverage is less than 75%, then you cannot deploy your Apex class. Then you cannot deploy your Apex class. And the next thing here it is, they if they ask a question like, can we deploy an Apex trigger? Can we deploy an Apex trigger with 0% code coverage? So then simply what we can say, we cannot deploy your Apex trigger without any code coverage. You should be at least 1 percentage of code coverage is required. 1 percentage of code coverage is required. So with this 1 percentage also, we can deploy it. Okay, if your R code coverage is more than 75% and your trigger code coverage is 1%, then it is allowing you to deploy the changes. But in the case of if it is less than 70%, it won't allow. Or even if your trigger code coverage is 0, then you cannot deploy it. You cannot deploy it. So this scenario is only applicable to the Apex trigger. So Apex trigger you cannot deploy with 0% code coverage. Apex trigger you cannot deploy with 0% code coverage. So sometimes in our interview they are going to ask you this question. Okay, so can we deploy an Apex classes without code coverage? Can we deploy an Apex trigger without code coverage? Then simply what we can say, we can deploy Apex classes with a 0% code coverage as well. But if your R code coverage is more than 75%. So in the case of like Apex trigger, you cannot deploy your Apex trigger even your R code coverage is more than 75%. So if your Apex trigger is 0% code coverage, then you cannot deploy. You need at least 1 percentage of code coverage is required. Okay, and the next thing here it is, they are going to ask you this question. So why this test class? So why this test class is required? So Salesforce like trying to maintain some standards. So they are trying to verify our code is working perfectly fine or not. So they are like trying to verify our code working for perfectly fine or not. So when they're like trying to verify our code, we with these test classes we are doing unit testing. We are doing unit testing. Okay, so with these code coverage, if you're getting code coverage, then only Salesforce allowing us to deploy from a sandbox to the production. So with this code coverage only, we are able to like deploy sandbox to the production. So then if they ask a question like this, okay, for example, I am like trying to deploy our code Apex classes from one sandbox to the another sandbox. Can we deploy without code coverage? Okay, from one sandbox to the another sandbox, can we deploy without code coverage? For example, I have implemented my Apex classes in developer arc, and I am trying to deploy to the production arc. I am trying to deploy to the QA arc. Or I have implemented my Apex classes in QA arc, and then I'm like trying to deploy to the UAT. Okay, so at this moment, if you're like trying to deploy it, if you're like trying to deploy it, then it won't ask you any code coverage. It won't ask you any code coverage. You can deploy it between sandboxes. You can deploy it between sandboxes. But the thing here it is, if it is like deploying in the sandboxes, right? It's not a best practice. As a best practice, we need to implement the code coverage. Then we need to validate it. Then after we need to deploy from one sandbox to the another sandbox. So if you would like to deploy, then you can deploy it without any issues. Without any issues, you can deploy it. But as a best practice, you need to implement the test classes, and you need to cover the code coverage. Then only you can deploy it from one sandbox to the another sandbox. But it's not a mandate. But it's not a mandate. We need to mention this step. Okay, and next thing here it is, so how these test classes we are going to implement it, and these test class, whatever the code we have written inside the test class, it is going to come under our Apex code line or not. So generally, if you're like creating any Apex classes, or if you're creating any of the Apex trigger, whatever the characters you have entered within these Apex classes and then Apex trigger, that is going to count. And we have a limitation for that. Already we discussed when we are working with our when we are like working with our Apex classes. Okay, so if you go with your Apex classes, we are having some limitation. Each and every arc having some limitation here. So how many characters we can add it here? Okay, so how many like characters we can add in our Apex classes and then Apex trigger. So as of now, I have added these many characters, and total my arc limit I have consumed 5.94 percentage only. I have consumed 5.94 percentage only. So as per like a developer arc, it is allowing us to use up to 6 million characters. It is allowing us to use up to 6 million characters. So in the case of like beyond 6 million characters, Salesforce not allow us to create a new Apex classes, not allow us to like add any modifications in our Apex classes. But the thing here it is, whatever the test classes we are implementing, so these test classes code, it won't be part of these limit. Okay, so these test classes excluding comments and at the rate is test annotated classes. So whatever the comments you are adding in your Apex classes, along with that, whatever the test classes you have implemented, it will be excluded. It will be excluded from these limit. Okay, so generally sometimes people they are going to ask you this question as well. So when you are implementing Apex classes or like test classes, at the time these test classes is whatever the characters you are using, it is a part of our limit or not. It is a part of our limit or not. So then simply what we can say, it's not a part of limit. It's not a part of limit. Test classes is excluding from our character limits of our Apex classes. Okay, so these things we need to mention. So then after, so how we are implementing these test classes, and what are the annotations we are going to use. So then after, what are the common challenges we are facing, and what are the issues we are facing, how to overcome those issues, that we are going to discuss it now. So generally, if you're like creating any of the like a test class, what you need to, first of all, you need to thoroughly understand the functionality of Apex class. Okay, so if you're implementing test class for any of the Apex class, if you're implementing test class for any of the Apex trigger, first you need to thoroughly understand the functionality of the corresponding Apex class. So what this Apex class is doing, and what it is when I'm using any method, what will happen. So if you're like thoroughly aware of that one, then only you can start implementing these test classes. Okay, for example, I'm like going with our classes here. So here I'm having like some pin code API. So not this one. So maybe like if I go with like any of the classes, whatever the classes we are having. So if I go with these account create 34, account create 34, or whatever the classes we are having. So we can just try to verify what is the functionality of this class. So if I go with this class, what basically it is doing, it is receiving one account parameter and then creating the corresponding record. So in the case of if it is successfully created, then we are passing a acc id. So in the case of if it is having an issue, then we are simply passing the corresponding exception message here, the corresponding exception message here. So generally what happened, right, when you are implementing any of the test class, you need to write multiple methods for if and then else condition, if and then else condition. So if we see here, right, we are using try and then catch block. So if you're implementing your test class, so your test class, it is going to cover only either a try scenario or a catch scenario. That means either you can go with a success scenario or a false scenario. Okay, so but the thing here it is, we need to cover both try and then catch. We need to cover both try and then catch. So how we are going to cover, how we are going to cover, and then how we can implement these test classes, that we can discuss it now. So now I am simply creating one of the class. Even for test class also, we are going to use Apex class only. I am going to specify generally what we are going to do. Whatever the class we are creating, so simply we can specify with the same name. So account create test 34. So whatever the class we are creating, we are going to simply add a test end of your class name. So if it is account create, simply what we are going to do, account create test. In the case of it is a contact create, you need to mention a contact create test. So in the case of a sample class test. So like that, we can add a test end of your class. So it's not mandated to give like that, but for remembrance and for our convenience purpose, we are going to give name like that. So if you would like to identify what the test class of these account create, then simply what we can do, account create test, you can get it easily. If you're giving a different name, it's difficult to identify. So that's the reason all the people we are following with the same approach. So whatever the account create, the class name, end of your class name, we are just appending test here. So now I am going to create these Apex class, and here we need to use an annotation at the rate is test, at the rate is test. These annotation we need to use it. Okay, so if you're using at the rate at the rate is test annotation, then automatically our Salesforce treated as it is a test class. Salesforce automatically it is treated as a test class. So then after we are going to use at the rate is test void test method. Okay, so say test method, simply we can specify our method name like this. So simply we can specify our method name like this. So within this method you can start writing your code. You can start writing your code here. So at the rate is test, one moment.
Static keyword is
So we need to give it at the rate is test, that is fine. Otherwise what we can do, we need to use a test method, and here you can provide the method name here, you can provide the method name here. So with the help of this one, we can start creating a data. So whatever the class we are using, so within the class we need to create data based on your Apex class. So here with the logic, we are not implementing any logic inside the test class. So inside the test class, what we are going to do, based on your Apex class, we need to create the sample data. We need to create the sample data, and then we need to call the corresponding Apex class method. Whatever the methods we are having, we need to call the Apex class method from our test class. So here, what they need, so they need data like account ACC. So here we just need to pass the account record. So if you would like to pass the account record, what we need to do, I am going to prepare in a test data like this. So test class is a test class. Within the test class, we are not implementing any code. So again repeating, test classes, we are not implementing any functional code. So here what we are going to do, we are just implementing test data. We are just implementing test data. So here account ACC equal to new account, new account, and then, so what I'm going to do, one moment. So here what I'm going to do, account, and then so simply I'm like trying to prepare these data here. So whatever the data we are having, so we need to prepare it here. So I'm going to use account dot name equal to some so and so test, whatever the mandate fields required, right? So we need to go with that one. So test, and then any other mandate fields required to create a test class, required to create an account. So those all fields you need to specify here. So I'm, as of now, I feel like only this test is fine. So then after, what I'm going to do, so here these Apex class we need to pass it without inserting, that means without creating your Apex record, you need to pass it. So that's why what I'm going to do, I'm not creating, uh, I'm not creating this one. So simply what I'm going to do, I'm going to call this particular method. So if you would like to call, what you need to do, account create 34, and then if it is a static, then directly you can call this method. If it is not a static, then you can create an instance, then after you can call it. So now simply I am going to use our class name. So dot, it is a static, then directly I can call this one create account, and then I am going to pass the parameter here. I am going to pass the parameter here, ACC. Simply I am passing this parameter. So like this, we can call our class in our test class. So if you're able to implement it like this, then automatically run test option is enabled in our developer console. Run test option is enabled in our developer console. So now what you can do, just click on run test. Just click on run test here. So if I go with this option, if I go with this option, then it is going to verify. It is going to verify, and then in the case of any issues is there, you are able to get it here. Okay, so you are able to get here. But in the case of if it is not having any issues, then you are able to get the success message. So once you got the success message, so in our right side you can see all your Apex classes, all your Apex classes. So our Apex class name is account create 34, right? So I am navigating to the account create 34. So here the code coverage is 77 percentage. 77 percentage. So if you see here, right, only success data is like covered, and then the lines is not covering here. So total 9 lines. Out of these 9 lines, 7 lines are covered. Out of these 9 lines, 7 lines are covered. Because of that, we got a 77 percentage. We got 77 percentage. But if you would like to cover, if you would like to cover these catch block as well, then what you can do, you need to prepare a separate method for, you need to prepare separate method to verify your failure data. So now what we can do, I'm going to call the test account for exception. So here what you can do, without passing account name, so intentionally you need to implement a error here. Intentionally you need to implement a error here. So while creating an account, Name is mandatory, but here we are not providing any name intentionally. We are missing our name. So why? Because it should generate an error. It should generate an error. In order to generate this error, we are like missing this one and then directly calling this one. So now I am able to save this one. Then I am going to run our test class here. So again, it is success. So we don't have any issues in our test classes. So then after I am going to verify our account create 34. If you see it right, so now we got a 100% code coverage. We got 100% code coverage. So earlier what happened? We are able to get the only like a 77 percentage. Why? Because we have implemented only positive scenario. We have implemented only positive scenario. So if record is created, then what will happen? We have implemented only such scenario. So in the case of in the case of this negative scenario, so if you would like to verify whether you are getting exceptions or not, so for that what we did, so without using our account name, directly I am passing account instance to our class, so that it is throwing an exception. Because of that, this catch block also covered. These catch block also covered. So generally in the case of if else statement, so if and else both will not cover in the same class. What you can do, you need to prepare different methods. So one method for if statement, and then one method for else statement. One method for else statement. It is in a like a best practice we need to follow. Okay, so generally some people what they are going to do, if the code coverage is more than 75%, they will leave the class. Okay, it should not be like that. Majority of the people, they are asking us to implement at least 80 to 85 percentage. Okay, so in such scenarios, we need to we need to implement code coverage for both if statements as well as else statements. In the case of if you are not having much lines, then you need to implement code coverage for both success scenario as well as error scenario. So intentionally we are creating an errors here. Intentionally we are creating an errors here. So for this one, what we did, we are able to provide without any name, directly calling these apex, so that we got an error. So that's why we are simply getting it is going to cover this exception block as well. So if you would like to see detailed code coverage, so now if you see here, right, so all test is 100 percentage, first method is 77 percentage, and second method is 88 percentage. 88 percentage. So we are getting an exception. Because of that, these line is not covered. Okay, so 88 percentage of code coverage is complete covered in our second method. In the case of a first method, 77% is covered, but overall code coverage is 100 percentage. Overall code coverage is 100 percentage. Okay, so like this we can implement we can implement test classes for our apex classes. So when you are trying to implement any test class for your apex class, you need to verify first. You need verify your apex class, what's happening within this apex class. So what are the records we need to create it? What are the records we need to create it? For example, if you are implementing test class for opportunity object, if you're implementing test as for apex opportunity apex trigger, so then generally what we are going to do, directly we are going to create the opportunity record. But it should not be like that. It should not be like that. What you need to do, first you need to create the account record. So under the account record, you need to create the opportunity record. In some of the objects are in some of the test classes, right, you need to create multiple parent records. So for example, it may be having a parent, and then above level parent, and then above level parent, all the things we need to create it. Okay, so in the case of if you're using these test classes, okay, so these test classes, what we need to do, we need to verify the record. So within the record, we need to verify the classes and the parent record, and then above level parent record, and then above level parent record. So we need to create from top to bottom. We need to create from top to bottom. So then only we can cover our opportunity, or like whatever the record here. Okay, so generally if you're implementing in a test class for like a student class, then what we are going to do, we are like trying to create only student data. But it should not be like that. Whatever the parent of the student, and then for the parent, whatever the parent, for example, we have an account. Under the account, the school is there. Under the school, we have a student is there. So now if you would like to create the student record, then first you need to create the account. So then after, you need to create the school, and then after you need to create the student. So like that, we need to create the records in our test classes. Okay, so because of like creating duplicate records, because of like creating these duplicate records in multiple test classes, generally they are following some util classes. I will explain how we are going to create a util class. But before going to that, so here what we are like trying to do, we are like trying to create a test data. We are like trying to create test data. So then in your interview, they are going to ask you this question. So whatever the records we are creating, whatever the records we are updating in our test classes, it is going to update in our Salesforce data or not. It is going to update in our Salesforce data or not. Then simply what we can say, we cannot whatever the classes we are using, it won't save in our database. It won't save in our database. So generally, what will happen, right? Whatever the data we are going to we are going to create it here. Whatever the data we are preparing here, so that is going to deploy, that is going to create it until this test class execution is happening. Until this test class execution is happening. So once the test class execution is completed, then whatever the records created, whatever the records modified, it will be rolled back. It will be rolled back. That means it won't be available in our database. Only when we click on the run test, so during the execution of these test class only, the records will be created in our database. Once test class execution is completed, automatically it will be permanently rolled back from our database. It won't be available in our database. Okay, so these things we need to explain to them. And next thing here, so generally they are going to use some annotations here. They are going to use some annotations here. So the annotation is basically, the first annotation is at the rate is test. At the rate is test. So these at the rate is test is you need to use if you would like to, if you would like to um, if you would like to prepare a test class, then it is a mandatory annotation. So if you would like to declare whether this class is test or not, with the help of at the rate is test, you can declare it is in a test class or not. And here we are going to use one more option, see all data equal to true here. See all data equal to true here. So as a best practice, we cannot use see all data equal to true. So what will happen if we are using see all data equal to true in our test classes? Okay, so generally what happened, right? So if you are using a see all data equal to true, true like a variable in our at the rate is test annotation, so it is going to consider our Salesforce data. It is going to consider our Salesforce data. For example, so here what I am trying to do, I am trying to create an account record. So rather than creating an account record, what you can do, you can use a existing record. You can use existing object records, whatever the records available in our object, right? Account object or contact object, you can access within your test classes. You can access within your test classes. So if you are not using this statement, see all data equal to true, then you don't have an access to access our Salesforce objects, whatever the account object, contact object. If you're using a SQL query like this, so generally if you're implementing any SQL query account, so ACC equal to, so if you're using a SQL like this, select ID comma name from account limit one. Okay, so if you're implementing any of the software, then it won't give you any results. It won't give you any results. So if you create records within your test process, then only it is going to give the results. Otherwise it won't give you any results. But if you are using see all data equal to true, if you are using see all data equal to true, then what happen, it is going to access our object data, salesforce object data, so that it can get the data here if you're using software. So with these data you can perform the our test execution very simple and then easily. But the same set of data that may be available in our like production or like a target arc. For example, I'm like trying to deploy from a sandbox to the production. So in sandbox I have required data available in our sandbox. So for your testing purpose, you have created records. For your testing purpose you have created records, so that if you are like running test classes, it is going to give the good code coverage, and you are able to like get the 100% code coverage. But the same class, if you're running in production, so if those records are not available in production, then automatically what happen, right, it is going to give the low code coverage, and your test class may fail. Your test class may fail because so those records, those set of records not available in production, not available in production. So generally what happen, whatever the records you have created in your sandbox, it is restricted to available only within these sandbox only. It won't be available in other sandboxes, and it won't be available in production. But if you're like trying to if you're trying to deploy your test classes, if you're like trying to deploy your test classes, then then what happened, right, it won't be it won't be available in other arcs. So because of that, if you're using c all data equal true, it is trying to access the data. But the thing here it is, these records not available in target arc, so that you will get an exception in your test process. So that's why, as a recommendation, salesforce never recommended to use c all data equal to true variable in our c all data equal to true variable in our test classes. If it is really mandate, then only you can use it. So when it is mandate in sense, if you are implementing web services, so if you are accessing some standard objects, at the time only you need to use see all data equal to true. So remaining all scenarios, we should go with only see all data equal to false. That means you should not specify anything here. You should not specify anything here. We just need to use at the rate is test, at the rate is test. So in our interviews they are going to ask you this question as well. So what is the use of see all data equal to true? Okay, so can we use it or not? Then simply what we can say, so we cannot use c all data equal to true. Why? Because so if you are using c all data equal to true in our test classes, it is trying to access data of our salesforce objects. If same set of records is not available in target arc, when we are like deploying our changes, then it will throw an error, and our test classes will fail. So because of all these things, we should not use see all data equal to true annotation in our test classes. Okay, so we should prepare whatever the test data, right, that you need to prepare within this test class itself, within the test class itself. So these things we need to remember. Okay, and the next thing here it is, for example, I have created some account record here. I have created some account record here. So if I'm like trying to access these record in another method, if I'm like trying to create account record, and if I'm like trying to access these record in another method, so then it won't be available. So whatever the records we have created, so within this method, so that is available only within this method. It won't be available in other methods. It won't be available in other methods. So then what we can do, we are going to use one functionality here. So the functionality is basically test setup. The functionality is basically test setup. At the rate test setup, we are going to use at the rate test setup here. So within this test setup, we can prepare your data. I am going to prepare public static void, and then we can use method here test data, and then you can prepare data, whatever the records do you want to use, whatever the records do you want to use, you can prepare here, you can prepare here. So once you are able to prepare here, so these data available, these data available in all the methods within this class only, within this class only. Sometimes because of the requirement, we are going to implement multiple methods, we need to implement multiple methods. So if in the case of like if you are having 5 to 6 methods available, so you are going to create 5 to 6 methods. Each and every method you need to create for example, you need to create opposite record. Then what you are going to do, you are going to create the account record, you are going to create the contact record, then you are going to create the opportunity record. So similar way, remaining 4 methods also you are going to do the same exercise. So rather than creating these many places, what we can do, we are going to create test records. Whatever the test records is required, you are going to create within this test setup, within this test setup. So then after wherever like wherever it is required, you can simply query here, you can simply query here. So these test setup records, these test setup records, that is accessible within this test class only, that is accessible within this test class only, and it won't be accessible outside of your test class, it won't be accessible outside of your test class. For example, I am having like a account create test. So similar way, I am going to use one more test class here, I am going to use one more test class here. So within this test class it won't be available. Whatever the test setup records, whatever the test setup records we have created here, so these records that is accessible only within this Apex class. So it won't be accessible in any other test classes, it won't be accessible in any other test classes. So here these records you can access within this test class inside any method. So any method it can be accessible, any method it can be accessible. And next thing here it is the setup. Generally in our interviews also they are going to ask you this question: what is a test setup? What is test setup annotation? So then simply what we can say, test setup is an annotation. In our we are preparing a sample data or like a test data within this test setup. So these data available within our test class only. So rather than creating records in multiple methods inside the test class, we are preparing a data in our test setup. The same data we can access within our methods. So how we are going to access in sense? So simply if I am creating like a account ACC new account, so I am going to like create one record here. So ACC dot name equal to some test, and then I'm like creating record here, insert ACC. So now one record is created, so this record is available. So if I would like to access within this method, what I'm going to do, so simply I'm going to use a list of account. So list ACC equal to, I'm like preparing an select ID comma name from account, where like simply you can like use this one. If you're able to like use this statement, then automatically whatever the records are created within this method, though that is by default available. So if you would like to go with any condition, you can go with the conditions as well. So if you're able to implement if you're able to implement a statement like this, then automatically what happen, right? Whatever the records created within this test setup, then by default that will be available here, by default that will be available here with the help of these SQL statement. Okay, so now if I would like to access in this method as well, then what I'm going to do, simple thing, same way how I'm able to access in first method, right? I'm going to access in a second method as well, I'm going to access in second method as well. Okay, so like this we can access data throughout the class in all the methods, throughout the class in all the methods. So here we are like preparing sample data, so these data you can access throughout of these methods. Okay, so any questions so far?
Before method also we need to write @is test, not return. So it will work.
Yeah, it will work. You can, if you are using a test method, then at the test is not required. So if you would like to remove test method, then you can use at the test.
Okay.
Shrikant,
Mhm.
Hello.
Yeah.
In interview they ask if you are using test setup method for creating test data or utility class also.
Yeah, I will explain it. Okay, next I'm going to explain the utility class.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Johar, you're asking something.
Any questions from anyone?
Actually, Shrikant,
Yeah.
can you explain the ninth line? I mean, uh, why we are not using public or what? Any
So
access?
here it is like inside the test classes, right? So all these are not required. Okay. So here we are like just uh, preparing in a test data, and we are just preparing in a these executing our test class, executing our upper class only. So because of all these things, because of all these things, like we cannot use a public here. If you want, you can use, so that won't give you any issue. Generally in our test classes we are not using this one, so we are going to use private. Generally in the case of like test classes we can use private. Okay, but it's not mandatory to use any of the access specifier inside the test class. Why? Because we are like just validating the functionality, we are not providing services to any other classes. So if you would like to provide the services, so next we are going to discuss about utility class. At that time I will explain, so how we are going to define public and all those things. Any other questions? Yeah. Sorry, come again. Mm-hmm. At the type the setup. So the usage is basically if you're creating recording, if you would like to use account record in your test method, in your method here, then what you need to create it, you need to create it here. Okay, so whatever the records you need to use within this method, you need to create it here. So similar way, the same records you need, if you would like to use in our another method as well. Okay, for example, I'm having like four methods inside my test class. So in all these four methods I am creating account records. All these four methods I am creating account records. So rather than creating account records in four methods, I am going to create simply in our test setup. Okay, so if you create in one place, then you can access in four methods. You can access in four methods. So if you would like to create only account record, then it won't be burden for you. But sometimes what happen, right? We need to create a multiple records. We need to create multiple records. So maybe if you would like to create some product record, or if you would like to go with some opportunity product record, so if you would like to create such kind of records, right, then you need to like prepare from scratch to like from top to bottom. So in that scenario, right, in that scenario what happened, you need to create multiple object records. You need to create multiple object records. So rather than creating like a rather than creating multiple object records in each and every method, what you can do, you can prepare within these test setup, within this test setup, and you can access in all the methods, whatever the methods you have prepared within these test classes. That may be like a single method or like multiple methods. Inside all the methods you can access the test data here, only reducing our efforts. Okay, So it won't give you any other feature here. It is going to reduce our efforts, and it is going to reduce number of lines in our test classes. Okay, so if you're like creating record here, if you're creating record here, and in the case of like other method, if you're creating records in one more place and one more place, then it is a duplicate records you are creating. So rather than doing like that, we are creating in a single place, and then we are accessing in all the methods. Is it clear? System.debug is just for our analysis only. It won't give you anything. But in our test classes, we are going to use system.asset equals. Okay. So these system.asset equals that we are like verifying whether so this execution is properly happened or not. So generally what happened whenever record is created, the ID should be written here. So in the case of like this scenario, what happened? It is going to return ID. It is going to return ID. So what you can do, you can like add one system.asset equal statement here. So system.asset statement here, asset equals to. So asset equals to, we are going to verify whether the ID is generated or not. The ID is generated or not. So sometimes you may be like verifying a calculation part. So whatever the expected output, and then your output, these method output, so that you are going to verify here. So asset equals to asset not equals to asset equals to asset not equals to, such kind of statements we are going to use it. So generally in our like companies, right, they are going to ask you to write at least one asset statement in each and every method. So if I'm implementing the first method, I'm implementing second method, in each and every method they are asking us to write at least one asset statement. So what is this asset statement in the sense? So whatever the results it is going to provide to us, whatever the results it is going to provide to us. In the case of like a first method, you should provide a ID. In the case of like a second method, you should provide a exception. You should provide exception. So as per our expectation, in first method it is going to return the ID, and second method it is going to return the exception. Okay, so those values is available or not, we can verify here. Okay, within the system of asset equals to, we need to specify actual value and then expected value. So we are going to keep it actual value and then expected value like this. So our actual value and then expected value. So why I am not using here in sense? So ID we cannot predict what it is going to generate. So ID it is going to generate randomly. So because of that, I am not predicting anything here. But in the case of like any calculation, so we can give the our expected value and then actual value. So we can like specify here. Okay, so that it is going to verify whether it is like your code executed properly or not. So in the case of if you're expecting the outcome is basically 10K, but you got like 9,000 or like 8,000 like that, then something your code having issues in or your code may be like not functioning properly. Okay, so like that they are going to analyze. Okay, so any other questions?
No, Shrikant, clear.
So any other questions so far?
No, Shrikant, clear.
Okay. So if you're good with this one, then we can go with the utility class. So generally, what is this utility class? We are going to do here in sense. So if you go with our real-time scenarios, many places, many places, we need to create account records, contact records. Okay, so why? Because if you would like to create the opportunity, or if you would like to create a contact record, you need to create account record. Okay, so similar way, so multiple requirements, so each and every requirement, at least one time you need to create the account record. So why? Because account is like a base for all the functionalities. Because of that, everywhere you are going to refer the account functionality, you are going to refer account record. So because of that, you need to create a account record in each and every class, each and every classes. So if you're having like a 100 Apex classes, if you're having 100 Apex classes, so if you are like creating a records in a 100 Apex classes, so that is fine. So initially, like we are having developers, so we are able to like created test setup data in a 100 test classes. That is fine. But next time what happened, right? So some people like added a new validation rule in our account object, new validation rule in our account object. Then automatically what happened, right? As per the new validation rule, all the 100 test classes, it is going to fail. All the 100 test classes, it is going to fail. So they have created one new field. They have created one new field. So the field is mandate for all the users. The field is mandate for all the users. So then automatically what happened? Whatever the existing test classes you have created, all the test classes, it is going to fail. Okay, so now what you need to, whatever the latest validation rule you have implemented, based on the latest validation rule, you need to mod wherever account record is created, wherever account record is created, you need to modify in each and every class. You need to modify in each and every class. Okay, and wherever account record is created, so everywhere you need to modify it as per the latest validation rule. As per the latest validation rule, it's like a really difficult for our developers, and it is going to like a wastage of our, it is going like a waste our efforts. Okay, so why? Because in 100 Apex classes, you need to verify where account record is created, where account record is updated. So based on your record creation and then updation, you need like add these validation functionality. You need to add these validation functionality, whatever the mandate field within this validation, so that you need to place it over there. Okay, so that's really difficult for them. So in the case of like 100 test classes is fine, but if it is having more than 100 test classes, then it require like at least 1 week or like 2 weeks of efforts. It require at least 1 week or 2 weeks of efforts. So because of all these reasons, because of all these reasons, so our people, they are like providing, they are like concluded one workaround. They are concluded one workaround. The workaround is basically, we are going to create one test class. We are going to create one test class. So within the test class, we are like just preparing a data. We are like just preparing a data, and these data you can access across all other test classes. You can access all other test classes. So how we are going to do in the sense, simply we are going to prepare a class like this. Okay, so our utility class, generally they are going to use utility class only. So majority of the people, they are going to call as a utility class only. So within this util, what you can do, what you can do, you are going to specify at the rate is test, at the rate is test, and then here, so you are going to use public and then static. So void, or like we can use like a list of accounts, list of account. So within this account, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to accept a integer number, integer some number, or like a count, I'm going to use it. So here I'm like simply preparing like this. So here what I'm going to do, list of accounts. So list of account, list acc equal to new list of account, and how many records is required. Based on this count, I am going to prepare it here. So for integer I equal to 0, I less than count I plus plus. So like this, I am going to prepare some sample records here. So how many account records is required, you can simply create it with the help of this method. Okay, So I'm going to use this method here. So acc dot name, acc dot name equal to, so whatever the name you want, you can add it here. So then after, so as of now I don't want like add anything, so simply I am adding to the list add of acc, and then I am going to return the statement. I am going to return, I'm not creating, I'm just preparing a account setup data, and then I am returning this one, public static account create. After this one I am going to return our list acc. So like this I am preparing one utility class. So in the case of if you need account data, then you can simply call this particular method. So what I'm going to do, these class I am going to call it here. So if you would like to use your like test data, then what you can do, rather than using like this account record, what you are going to do, simply you can call like you can call like simply what you can do, you can call it like this. So util dot whatever the object you want, you can like simply specify account create. So you need like five records, then you can simply provide like this. Or if you would like to need like 10 records, then you can simply provide 10 here. So then automatically what happened, right? You are able to get the 10 sample records here. You are able to get the 10 sample records here, or you are able to get the whatever the count, based on the count you are able to get the sample records here. You are able to get the sample records here. So with the help of this one, with the help of this one, like in every class, whatever the 100 test classes within your org, so every class you can pass like these parameter, and you are able to access records within your test class, records within our test class. So here in the case of like account is fine. If I need contact, then within this util class, right, you can prepare like a contact record like this. So here I am going to use public static, and then void. So not void, list of contacts, I need to return list of contacts. So list of contact create, contact create. So here what you need to do, you need to pass the account records. Based on the account record, you need to create the contact records. So because of that, what you can do, it will accept the parameters as a list of account records, list of account record. So I'm going to use list acc. So like this we need to prepare like a contact record. So here what you can do, I'm going to use list of contact. So list con equal to new list contact record, and then I'm going to iterate with our account records, whatever the records we are having, account acc, account a, and then I'm going to use list acc. So then after I'm going to iterate it. So here I'm preparing the contact record. So contact c equal to new contact, and then so c dot account id equal to our account dot id. So whatever the like c dot account id equal to our a dot id equal to a dot id, and then so remaining fields we are going to populate as it is. Okay, so c dot like last name. So I'm going to populate something like a test. So then after I am adding it to the list, I'm adding it to the list dot add of C, and then finally I am going to return this listicon. Finally I am going to return this listicon. So like this we can prepare and contact records. So like this, whatever the object data is required, whatever the object data you are going to use within your test classes, so everything you can prepare within this util class. So if you are preparing within this util class, right, you can access across all the test classes, So if you are facing any issue, like if you are like implementing any new validation or like a new functionality within our object, then simply you can modify in one place. So if you're able to modify in one place, that is going to reflect in all the test classes. So earlier what happened, if you are like making any changes, if you're like implementing any validation rule, so that you need to update in that you need to update in all the test classes available within your arc, but now if you're using these util class, right, so you are like creating records within your util class only, and you just provide the sample data to all your test classes. So with the help of this one, what happened, you are not creating any sample data, in test classes. Everything you are preparing in util data only. So it is a centralized class for all the test classes. So if you make changes here, automatically that is going to reflect in all the test classes. So like this, you can prepare your utility class. Like this, you can prepare your utility class. Some people called as utility, some people called as service, some people called as util. So based on their convenience, they are going to use different names for this one. They are going to use different name for this one. Okay, so like this we can create the utility class, and these utility class data you can access in our test classes. Okay, so any question on this?
Shrikant, just
Srikanth, do
scroll
you
over.
need to do any DML?
So that's up to your choice. Some people what they require, right, they need data and they're going to perform the DML operation inside the test classes. Some people, they are like perform the DML operation inside the utility class, and then they are accessing only the created records within the test classes. That's completely depending upon your choice.
Shrikant, can you please scroll little up first?
Mhm.
Yeah, and some more starting one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. For the same account, we are creating contact.
Yes.
Yeah, understood, Shrikant. Utility class.
Any question?
Shrikant, we are here. We are not using test method.
Yeah,
So
it's not required. Why?
at the rate
Because
each test is not required here also. Then
no. If you're not using other test, right, then it requires test classes for this one. Okay, if you're using athlete test, then you can deploy this utility class without any code coverage. Did you get my point?
no. Please repeat the point.
So
What?
if you are using athlete test, so then you no need to create test class for this class. So if you are not using athlete test, right, then you need to create a test class for this utility class as well.
Before method, I'm saying. Before method.
Before method is not required. That is fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So any questions from anyone?
No, Shrikant. Clear.
Okay. So we go for a break. So once we're back at maybe 10:20 or like 10:30, so we can like discuss other topics. Okay, is it fine?
Okay. Okay, Shrikant.
Okay.
We're back. We'll continue 10:20.
Okay, Shrikant.
At what time will connect, Shrikant?
10:20.
10:20.
Sorry.
Yeah, push you
Sorry.
go back.